As always, we are going to be getting in the chat. This is going to be helpful for me to kind of see where everybody's at in terms of teams and training. So if you can just let me know, how many team members do you currently have? It could be full-time, part-time, add them all up. Go ahead, drop them in the chat. All right, seeing some double digits in there. Thank you for those of you that are participating. 10 at my academy. All right. So for a lot of you, enough that this should be top of mind, right? How do we train? How do we train our people? I always say there's two boxes you never get to check off in your business. They both start with the letter P. One are processes. Like, you are always going to be updating and evolving your processes, especially now with tech and AI and all the different softwares. I'll never forget when I built out my complete systems manual. It was this massive 3-ring binder, and it literally had every screenshot on how to set up everything in our CRM. And back then we were using Rainmaker, and then we switched to CRM. And guess what we had to do? I was updating like hundreds of pages of screenshots. And this was kind of before like Zoom was popular or Loom was popular. So processes, you never get to check that box off. And then the other one is people. There's never going to be a time where you get to say like, okay, cool, we're done, because things happen. I think we've all maybe had people in our organization that we thought were lifers, right? There's no way they're ever going anywhere. And then something happens, right? Life gets in the way, and opportunity presents itself. So processes and people are just two boxes we really never get to check off. So what I want to ask now is just, let's do like on a scale of 1, 2, or 3. All right. And I'll drop this in the chat as well. On a scale of 1, 2, or 3, how confident are you that your team would be able to handle what I would consider the most important conversations that happen in your school? So appointment setting, enrollments, renewals, upgrades, and cancellations. So what is your confidence level? 1 is, I'd be a little terrified if they had to handle all of those conversations. 2 is, they could handle some of it. 3 is, I could leave it for a week and trust the process. So 1, 2, or 3, 1, not so confident, 3, really confident. And maybe, there's like, well, with appointment setting, I'd feel really confident, but with enrollments and cancellations, maybe not so much. Okay. And I love that, Mr. Hurtado, only 1 could do it all, right? So then what happens if they aren't there? Okay. And I think this is why cross-departmental training is so important, and building bench strength for when people are out. So the kind of, and you don't need to put this in the chat, but the next question we need to ask, if you did score like on a 1 or a 2, is it a people problem, or is it just we have not done enough consistent training? And I think for the most of you, it's probably the latter, right? It just has to do with having more consistent training. And that's really what today's, conversation is gonna be about. Because I think one of the number 1 skill sets you as an owner, for those of you that are owners, that you will always have if you are a business owner, unless you truly sit in what EOS calls the owner's box, meaning you are not CEO or COO, right? There's some people that they truly just own the business, and maybe they sit on the board, but they're not working in the day-to-day. And look, I love the book, The E-Myth. I think it's one of the most important books for owners to read. But I think some CEOs think that they should not work in the business. Like, if your title is CEO, you do still work in the business. You should have time working on the business. But if you are, you think the CEO of Apple doesn't work at Apple? Like, he's putting his hours in, guys, and he's putting a lot more than anybody else. So I think that book, The E-Myth, can kind of like confuse CEOs of like, oh, I should only be working on the business. No, you're going to be both. But unless you're truly in an owner's seat, right? And you're not CEO, COO, which really in a martial arts school using C-level suite, like we don't even use C-level suite at GrowPro. And we are very, very large, 70 employees, right? Not even considering using C-level language probably until like 7, 8, 9, 10 million. But I think one of the most important skill sets that you need as the owner is the ability to identify top tier talent, hire top tier talent, and train top tier talent. Like, I don't think that the need for that skill is ever going to go away if you want to scale. Right? If you are like completely happy, content with one location, I love that for you, right? I think it's important that we all know what our definition of success is. I've had conversations with school owners where that they literally said, Chris, if I died teaching on the mat, I know it would have been a great life, right? So maybe for some of you, that is the definition of success. For others, maybe it's like, no, I don't want to be in the school every single day. I want to be an offsite owner. I want to have multiple locations so that I can grow a team. And if the reality is, if you are only going to choose to have one location, at some point you are going to struggle with churn because there's just not going to be enough opportunities to keep people very, very long term. That's just kind of what we've seen, especially at Maya. And it's why I think a lot of schools do want to open up multiple locations, because you have amazing people on your team that you want to be able to give them more opportunities. And there's just kind of only so much opportunity with one location. So this ability to and I said hire talent, but that's also attract talent. Like, why should somebody want to work for you? And I think that's a very important question to ask ourselves. And it might be a little bit vulnerable question or difficult question for you to answer right now. But the skill set of attracting, hiring, and training talent is one that if you are going to be the owner of a business, it's never going to go away. Does that make sense? And I think that's why this conversation is so important, because what often happens when we do hire is we give them minimal training, right? And we know that it takes X amount of years to, earn a black belt, right? Why do we think that us spending an hour on their first day, a couple of hours the rest of the next week, and then a couple of hours the next week is enough for them to master the art of these conversations? And it's just not. But that's how a lot of us approach. And I am guilty of it myself. We just had a conversation around like our onboarding process and training, and that we do a good job of documenting. We do a good job of showing them. We do a good job of watching them do it once or twice, and then we let it go. And this like whole inspect what you expect and auditing the work and QCing the work doesn't happen enough, which is a big part of management. All right. So I'm going to unpack this team training playbook, and it's really going to be around what I consider the most, and I would consider these the most conversations really in any industry. Like, you've got to book appointments, you've got to get sales, you should have some form of upgrade or upsell. You have to be able to save cancellations. And if you have like term services that expire, we need to be able to renew them. And when you think about other industries, like even if I owned like a lawn care industry, all of those conversations would still be happening internally. And the only way that we're going to get really, really good around it is having a training system we can implement. So that's what we're going to be doing. Sound good? Can I get a thumbs up from everybody? All right, let me go ahead and share the screen. As always, we will have the recording up before the end of the day. We will also give you access to the slides as well. So I want you to be able to leave with a simple system that you can use on a weekly basis. I do think that training should be done at a minimum of a weekly basis, so that we can build a team that communicates with confidence. And guys, when you think about like business in its most simplistic form, business is about relationships, Like, most simplistic form, business is about relationships. How do we build relationships? We have to be great communicators, right? And the reality is, especially with our younger generations, some of them struggle to even talk on the phone because what have they been used to doing their whole life? Talking with their thumbs, right? So this is something that some of your younger students might not be as adept to as you were if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s where like texting wasn't a thing until I was in high school. We also need to make sure they're following a proven process. There is a way and there is a right way, and that's the way that we want them to follow. Being able to handle these important conversations with consistency and making sure that our training provides feedback, repetition, and also recognition. All right. So that you don't always have to come in and kind of like rescue the situation every day. So those 5 conversations that I was talking about really are about selling, serving, and retaining our students. And look, in the beginning, everything does depend on you, but I asked you guys earlier, and almost everybody had at least a couple. Some of you have double digits in terms of your team, so that not everything does have to depend on you, okay? I really want you to think about this. Your team's ability to communicate directly impacts how many leads become appointments, how many appointments become enrollments, how many students actually upgrade, how many families renew, how many cancellations are saved, and how much freedom you have as the owner. Like, that's how important training and communication is. And I get it. Like, Chris, I'm wearing a bunch of hats. There's a ton of things that, have to get done. I agree. And this is one of those hats you need to wear and that you need to prioritize for your team as well. So we're going to talk about this concept of build them or buy them. And then we're going to talk about how all of this really starts before you even hire someone. The one thing you absolutely need to get right when you do hire, and then we'll go into the team training playbook. Okay. As always, be present, ask questions, take notes. I'll be sure to get to all of that, participate in the chat. And really just kind of, when I go on trainings or I go to conferences, I'm really just looking for that one little nugget. Like, I don't need 27 things to go home with. What is the one nugget that's going to solve the bottleneck? That's my job as the CEO, is to know what is the number one bottleneck in my business right now. And if you don't know what it is, then you are the bottleneck. Like, that is your job to know what is the number one bottleneck. For some of you, number one bottleneck might be getting more appointments. For others, it might be conversion to enrollments. For others, it might be, hey, we're really great at selling paid trials, but the conversion to enrollment isn't there. For others, it might be upgrades. It might be renewals. I don't know that. You need to know that. So as we go through this, just look for the number one gap in your system, and that's what I want you to solve for. If you can walk away with just one nugget that solves for the number one gap you're having, to me, today was worth it. And it would be a success. Okay. So let's dive into these 3 concepts. All right. And it's this build them or buy them concept. All right. You really have 2 choices in your martial arts school. You can build the people you already have, or you can buy the talent by hiring someone who already has the skill. Now, if I asked you, which would you prefer? Would you rather hire internally your own students who have gone up through the ranks, or would you rather go to, Indeed or ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn and try to hire somebody? I guarantee 100% of you are going to say, I'd rather build the people I already have, right? The problem is, when you need those people, they might not be available or ready. And I know more often than not, I would see like a 12 or 13-year-old on the mat. I'm like, oh, this kid is going to be the best assistant instructor. I can't wait to hire him in 3 years, but I need somebody now. Okay. This is where the importance, and we're not diving into this today, but this is why you have leadership programs, instructor type programs to be able to build them up, right? In the ATA, they call it the legacy program, right? So that you can build bench strength, and you can also showcase how martial arts isn't just a hobby, and it could be a career. And I know quite a few people through Maya whose employees are making six figures in their career, right? But that's only possible because they had the systems and processes in place to be able to get them. So, of course, I'd like to build the people, but sometimes you need somebody and there's nobody in that pipeline. One of the things that helps is having those leadership programs, legacy programs to help. But if that's not the case, then you got to go buy the talent, right? We've got to go to the outside to hire. And the same way that having a full pipeline of prospects and appointments and potential new students is, like the lifeblood of our business, having a pipeline for your team, if you want to scale and grow to multiple locations, also has to become, just a lifeblood system as well. So those are the two options. I think we all know we would rather have it internal, but there may be a time where that's just not feasible. And then we have to go to the outside. And I've done trainings on this, on what kind of that entire hiring process looks like. This is something that I found 3 head instructors for my kids' program from the outside. So they were not, homegrown. All 3 of them worked for me for about 2 to 3 years, which some of you might think that that's amazing. Others maybe not so much. It served its purpose. It allowed me to not have to be on the mat and teach all of the classes, but I found them through Indeed. So it is possible, right? It's not that it's not possible, but it's just easier to build it internally. So you've just got to decide. And if there is a time where you can't build it, you just don't have the person and you need somebody now, you need to have a system of hiring. And if you've never done it before, it could be a little overwhelming, right? Like, where do I even start? And because we're at about 70 employees now. This year alone, we've probably hired 20 to 25 because we're scaling one of our departments. This is an area that we are really, really strong at. And if it's something that you need help with, please don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to hop on a Zoom and kind of walk you through that process. If you're like, Chris, I'm in need, I don't have the, person internally, and I do need to look externally. Okay. So build them or buy them. Okay. Each option costs you. Building someone internally takes time, takes training, takes coaching, takes patience, takes repetition. And I also think one thing that you might not expect is how the relationship can change once you go from I am just your instructor to now I am your boss. And if you haven't really thought about what that process is to get the pendulum swing from you are just, my student to now you are a team member or employee, it could really hurt the relationship. And I've seen a lot of school owners kind of struggle with that because just because you are a great instructor doesn't necessarily mean you're great at teaching others to be a great instructor, right? It's the same thing of like, you could have a phenomenal fighter. That doesn't mean they're going to be a great instructor. It's a different skill set. Okay. Then you have buying talent, and buying talent sometimes is going to be more money. It could be just like a longer hiring process. You do need to be stronger with recruiting. And there's potential culture risks, right? If you hire somebody internally, they kind of should already understand your culture. Both work, but both, have pros and cons. Okay. The other thing I want to remind you is whether you do this by building it or buying it is you cannot hire entry-level talent and expect executive level results without investing in development. Okay. And I think we just have this like misconception that, I'm going to hire this person and I'm going to do some minimal training and I'm going to get this kind of executive level results that you're probably used to outputting because you've been doing it for so long. Okay. So there's some, questions, and we have a full on interview, process that we take people through. And this is a big mistake I see school owners make who are choosing to build it internally. They completely skip the interview process. They're like, oh, I've known this kid since they were 5 years old. One, you're robbing them of going through the interview process, which is going to be helpful for them in their future if they're not going to stay at the school forever. Okay. So Regardless if you've known this kid since they were 3 years old in your little ninjas class, you do need to take them through a hiring process. All right. Some of the questions you consider: is this person capable of being built? Do they have the right attitude? Do they align with our values? Are they coachable and willing to practice? And I think from the beginning in the hiring process, you need to make it very, very clear that practice and training and role playing is a huge part of the success of the role. We want to set those expectations in the beginning. Okay. The next concept is it starts before you hire them. And I just kind of touched on that, but training really starts during the hiring process, because things like job descriptions and your core values should be shared while you are in the hiring process, so they have clarity around the role, right? And this is just as important if you're building them internally. You can't just assume, oh, this kid's been with me forever, so he knows what it's like to be an assistant instructor. He might know from the outside looking in, right, as a student that looks at the other assistant instructors, but they don't know what this looks like internally. Okay. So we need to make this super clear in that hiring process. Some of the things I would consider, and if you don't have job descriptions, how can you hold somebody to expectations that you've never laid out? It's not really fair, right? I would assume when you are testing your students to go from white belt to yellow belt to orange belt, or whatever, there's certain expectations that you are going to have and that you share that with them. Same thing with your team. So what are their core responsibilities? What are some of the required skills, right? What's the reporting structure? Who are they going to? Are they going to you? Are they going to someone else? What are the daily, weekly, and monthly expectations? What are the KPIs so they know what success is in this role? And then what are the standards of behavior? So these are all of the things I would consider putting in your job description, because all of this is going to set the expectation of what you expect in that role in terms of training and role playing. Okay. A lot of you know I'm really big on EOS, really big on core values. You just need to make sure you are communicating those clearly and often, so often that it feels like you are beating a dead horse. Do not, and maybe this sounds harsh, you don't get to tell me that your company has core values if your paid employees cannot recite them. Period. You don't have core values. Maybe you as the owner, but your company does not. Okay. I would ask, like, how much money would you bet that everybody on your team could recite your core values? Most companies just have words up on a wall, and it's not truly how they hire, fire, review, reward, and recognize. Okay. So that needs to be part of this process. Okay. The other thing is, when we're interviewing for the role, there should be some form of an assessment, right? And you have to be careful. There's different labor laws in every state. I know some owners that are like, yeah, I have the instructor come in and they've got to work, an entire night and we don't pay them. It's like, well, that might be against the law. So you do need to know what those laws are in your state, but there should be some form of an assessment, even if you know them, even if you are hiring them internally, whether that's role playing a lead call. Hey, I'm going to give them a script and I'm going to you're literally throwing them in the deep end of the ocean. You are not looking for perfection. What you are looking for is coachability. Are they able to take feedback when you have them walk through that role play? Okay. Another example, responding to a mock parent email, right? So these would be great if you're hiring somebody for the front desk or program director, or how would they handle pricing objection? And maybe you ask them a question they absolutely just don't know the answer to. Again, you're just looking at how do they handle the situation, right? What level of confidence? Are they upfront? I'm not exactly sure what process you want me to say, but if it was my responsibility, this is how I would handle that conversation. Or do they completely fold under pressure? Okay. So I like having some form of an assessment inside of the interview process, whether that's a physical assessment happening on the mat or it's something, like role playing a lead call or responding to an email. Because the wrong person with a great training system is still the wrong person. Remember that. Okay. And then concept number 3, the one thing you got to get right is onboarding. And I would say, there's a journey that our customers go on, right? And I've done a lot of trainings on that journey. First it starts with awareness. They got to become aware of you. Then they move to consideration. Why do I consider you over soccer or over your competitor down the street? And then we get them to buy, right? That's the purchase stage. And then there's the onboarding stage. And I think so many small businesses, not just the martial arts industry, focus so hard on the awareness, consideration, and purchase. And they completely drop the ball on the onboarding, which ultimately creates a problem in the next stage, which is retention. And ultimately, I want to get them to advocacy. So those are the 6 kind of stages of a customer journey. When you think about it, when you are hiring, it's the same 6 stages. Instead of purchase, it's just like job offer, right? We've got to get awareness that we're hiring. How do we get them to consider this career over, going to college or another career? How do we get them to say yes and we hire them, right? How do we onboard them? How do we keep them? And how do we make them walking billboards so they tell everybody how amazing our company is and that they are now advocates of our company, refer people to our company, and then the flywheel starts again, right? Once you have advocacy and you have people talking, whether it's your own students, right? That's where our referral programs come into place. It brings more awareness back into your business. And I don't think a lot of us, I think at the beginning, our focus is heavily on the customer journey, as it should be, right? How do we get more awareness, move them to consideration, get them to enroll, onboard them, retain them, and then turn them into advocates? As you start to grow your team, you need to look at this journey through their eyes as well, right? What is my pipeline of my hiring journey for my team members? And just like with our own students, where I think a lot of owners drop the ball on onboarding, I think a lot of owners drop the ball on onboarding with training their new hires as well. And we'll talk about some things that you can do instead, okay? The other aspect of this is having SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures, processes, playbooks. And I think a good portion of you, if you're starting to have, more team members, you probably have some processes written down. What I find is many schools don't have a process for the process. So they'll have like a checklist here, an SOP here, a playbook over here. Some of it's in a Word document. Some of it's in a Google Sheet. Some of it's in a Google Drive. And if that's you, I think that's, normal for a lot of people that are just getting started. But there's a difference between having it out of your head and down on paper, which is great. You absolutely need that, but actually having a system of utilization for it. Meaning, we have a way that we can use these SOPs, playbooks, whatever you want to call them, in actual training. And I think that that's a step for a lot of people where they need to put more emphasis on. So it's not just, we have a bunch of these documents and they're kind of all over the place. We do need this system of utilization. Okay. And one of the ways that we've been shifting to this, because we've been doing so much hiring, is creating what we're calling the standard for every single role. And in that standard, before our onboarding packets were maybe 10 pages, now they're starting to get to 40, 50, 60 pages because it's everything that person needs to be successful in that particular role, right? Now, we had versions of this for the instructor team versus the off the mat team program director, but I think it's safe to say that your chief instructor, your senior instructor, your assistant instructor, there's different expectations for each one of those individual roles. And you should have this is the standard for each one of these roles, okay? The last thing on onboarding that I want to touch on is that I do not believe black and white plug and play onboarding actually works. And I think it's something that we all want, right? We want to have that packet that it's just, here you go read it, and you're going to be good. And the problem is that every person enters with a different level of experience, learning style, confidence level, areas of strength. Everybody learns at different speeds, and they have different levels of communication. So we do want to have the standard, but you also need to understand it's going to need to be customized the way that you teach it, because everybody picks it up slightly different. One of the things that we moved towards that was super helpful is we have that standard operating packet. However, depending on the day that they start, right? If somebody starts on a Monday for you, or if somebody started on a Thursday for you, those schedules are going to be different. So what we do is, depending on the day that they're going to start, we create literally a minute by minute schedule that they know to follow. So let's say you hired a new program director and they're coming in at noon and their shift is 12 to 8. When they come in, they literally have their schedule from 12 to 12:15. This is what you're doing. From 12:15 to 12:45, this is what you're doing. And that's how we're able to customize where also, like, what does your schedule look like, right? Or if somebody else is training them, what does their schedule look like, right? You want them to sit in on an enrollment, conference. Well, do you have any enrollment conferences scheduled today? If not, right? So that's why being able to tweak it on a day to day. And we do it for a full week. We don't do it any longer than that, because we want to ask for feedback from them and say, okay, look, this is what we went over the last week. Where are you feeling strong? And what do you need more help with? And then we shift. So this idea of like this black and white plug and play, I think it's a cool concept, but it just doesn't really meet people with where they're at. And some people are going to pick up certain things faster than others, which is why you're going to want to mold and adjust, what those kind of first 90 days look like. I'm in a mastermind group, and I'll never forget, somebody was bragging about like the first 5 days is completely black and white for all of their new hires. And they sit them in front of a computer and they watch 8 hours of videos 5 days in a row. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like a really fun and exciting place to work. Not, right? So like, what's the experience that they're getting as well? Okay. So this is, I think, an important concept that not a lot of schools are utilizing when you do hire. And look, if you already have a team in place, you can still do this. But I know when I was first building my team, like program director would come in at around noon, right? That 12 to 8 shift, but we were running after school. So like at 2:15, you've got like students coming in, and then private lessons are starting at like 3:00, and then 4 p.m. prime time starts. So how much time does that really give you to train the new hire? It usually is like 1 to 2 hours max. And that's why I prefer more of a boot camp style of training versus just having them come in 1 to 2 hours, like before prime time, because the school is getting busy. You get distracted, right? You have people walking in and training becomes rushed. So what I would prefer is more of a boot camp where you could do a dedicated Saturday training. It could be like a 4 to 6 hour training block after classes. Maybe classes end at noon. So we're going to feed them lunch, and then we're going to do this instructor boot camp training or program director boot camp training. And it just allows you to download much more uninterrupted information into that new hire and do the things like role playing and training. And I've just found that doing it the other way, where you're only getting about an hour, maybe 2 per day, is just not the fastest way to get them up to speed. So if this is something that you would want to do, you would want to build this into your hiring process so they know. Like, hey, if we bring you on the first 4 Saturdays, we're going to do this boot camp style onboarding for you, so you can give them a heads up that that's the expectation. Okay. If you already have a team, but you know that there's a next level of training that we need to consider, then putting together this boot camp style of training, like, hey guys, next month on this Saturday, we're going to be doing a 4-6 hour training. I need you to come in. So you need to give them enough time so that they're able to put this on the calendar. But we have just found so it's just so much faster when you're not having the distractions of the day to day and walk-ins and things like that, and really able, think of it almost like an immersion camp, right? Being able to immerse them into all of your processes. Curious, has anybody done something like this with training new hires, like a boot camp style where you're doing like a 4, 6, or 8 hour session? Let me know in the chat, yes or no. Is this something that you have done? Oh, Miss Elliott, I like it. Not yet, right? No, not yet. Awesome. No, but I like it. Yes, we love it. Okay, so a couple of you have. Awesome. Cool. So I think that should be a major takeaway for some of you that have not done something similar to this. Okay. Depending on the role that you're hiring, what that boot camp can, include, definitely need to touch on your culture and the values, the customer journey. If this is, even if it's an instructor, I still want them. I don't like this. Program directors are the only one that can answer the phone or handle an enrollment or an upgrade. I do believe that there should be cross training where people can be bench strength for each other. Okay. Now, is my expectation that my program director is, the best at the things like lead handling and appointment setting and enroll? Yes. Okay. However, we do need to have backups, and that cross departmental training. What's also, and same thing, like getting the program directors on the mat and teaching them how to like lead a warm up, not because you would ever maybe plan on doing that, but just so they have a newfound respect for what that role actually is. And I don't think that happens enough in companies. One of the things that we were struggling with is we had 2 departments at GrowPro that they did not get along. Hindsight, I now know it was because the 2 leaders did not get along, and the fish stinks from the head, right? So you have 2 departmental leaders that don't like each other, and that's sifted down to the rest of their team. And a lot of it stemmed from they just didn't understand what the other person was doing in the company. One department thought like, oh, our role is so much harder than what the other department is doing. So you know what we did? On Friday during our all hands on deck, we started having people come up and explain what their day-to-day is. And we had them read through their job description and walk through what their day-to-day is like. And there was like just a new level of respect because the other people just didn't know, right? Mr. Hurtado, like, program director, not a martial artist, that's fine, right? But they can get on the mat and they can walk through it, right? They can go through what a mini class is like. You could ask them to lead the warm-ups, not because I'm saying your program director should be back up to your instructor, just so that they understand what it's actually like. And I think what you'll find is that there's a lot more cross-departmental respect that occurs, because I think some instructors think like, oh, this is the hardest job. And I think some program directors think like, no, you don't know what it's like having to make 100+ calls a day. This is the hardest job. So it's just kind of having that mutual found respect. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and dive into this team training playbook. So I do believe on a weekly basis for your full-time team members that this is a non-negotiable. Okay. Now, do I understand that it gets a little bit more difficult when you have part-timers, when you're hiring teenagers? I do. And in that case, this is why sometimes you have to renegotiate what is the expectations of the role, and being very prepared and giving them enough heads up to when these trainings are occurring. So for part-timers, if you could get once a month, I think that would be a really great place to start. But for your full-time salaried employees, this is a part of their job. Okay. At a minimum, I think, and I truly believe it's at a minimum 1 time a week. And I think where we kind of get held up is, for whatever reason, people think meetings like have to be an hour. Like, newsflash, they don't have to be an hour. They could be 15 to 20 minutes. Can you find 15 to 20 minutes 3 days a week for you and your program director, or you and the head instructor, or the manager of your school, whoever, to role play? And the answer is yes, you can. There is, and it could even be 10 minutes. If you can do 10 minutes 3 days a week, that's the same thing as doing one 30-minute session. And I just feel like a lot of owners immediately try to pump the brakes and say, that's never going to work in my school with my people. Well, with that attitude, you're right. It's not. So we need to ask, how can we make this work? Okay. And I think for full-timers, that should just be part of the role. I'm very big on theming weeks. And in the martial arts school, Wednesday was always our training day. That was the day that we trained. It's on the calendar. Okay. And depending on when classes start, and if you do want to have part-timers participate, if you have classes start at 4 p.m. and, they've got their shift maybe normally starts at 3. Hey, can we come in at 2:30? Or maybe we adjust some things, right? Maybe you do the cleaning at the end of the night and not the beginning of the shift. So we have more time to train. Okay. But at a minimum, one time a week. So let me know, what is your current, not meeting? A meeting to me is completely different than a training. Training meaning you are training on developing their skill set as a team member. I also don't think that we're all going to get on the mat and train martial arts together. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about training on how to become a better instructor or training on how to become a better program director. How often or not often are you doing that? Let me know. Is it weekly? Is it daily? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? Is it, Chris, we're not really doing that. And that's okay. That's why you're here, right? Daily 15 minutes, started Thursdays between our homeschool, 2 to love it, 1 time a week, Tuesdays, twice a week, very good, instructor week, staff sporadic. I know Mr. Steve's got a very, very large team. Every Thursday, beautiful. Okay, I love it. So for those of you that are responding, I think that's great. My question then would be, is it serving the purpose enough? Maybe the 1 time a week for 20 minutes isn't. So maybe we need to consider twice a week for 20 minutes or daily for 10 to 15. Get it out of your head that a training needs to be an hour long. It doesn't. We can make a lot happen with 15 to 20 minutes. It's those reps, right? It's the reps. Get the reps in. How do you have a sick arm bar? Go do it 10,000 times. Okay. So this is going to be step 1. I want you to choose the conversation. Let me know, out of these options, which one do you think your team needs the most help with? Is it booking appointments, confirming appointments, giving a tour, conducting discovery? And all that is asking questions during enrollment conference, right? Presenting pricing, right? Do they put the pricing and their hand is shaking because they have a low financial thermometer? Is it asking for the enrollment? Is it presenting an upgrade, getting a renewal, saving a cancellation, or handling an upset parent? Everybody's answers are going to be different here. So let me know in the chat, which one of these conversations do you think your team could use the most help with so that we could level them up? Just pick one. All right, saving a cancellation, asking for the enrollment, presenting pricing, converting the enrollment. I love it. And I knew this was going to happen. Do you guys see, there's not even one that I'm seeing pop up more than any other. And I think that's important because I get this question a lot. Chris, you do your training with your team every Wednesday. Can you give me your training lesson plans? And first off, it's I'm an open book. I will share anything and everything with everybody. But I honestly think it's doing a disservice because what my team needs to train on and what your team needs to train on is probably completely different, right? What my answer for choosing the conversation, as you saw, we got 50 people on here, maybe 20 of you participating. Yes, that was a little bit of a dig for those of you not participating. Sorry. Everybody's answer was different. So it's yeah, I could give you my lesson plan, but that might not be what your team needs. Okay. So just start with one of these conversations. Okay. And if you don't know what to train them on, this is my favorite thing to do. Make a list that everything your team does that pisses you off. Hey, when my instructor takes the trash out, he drags the trash across the floor. And if there's a hole in there, then there's liquid that spreads all over the floor. And that really ticks me off. Maybe that's happened to you. As you can hear, it's clearly happened to me because we clearly did not do well enough in training them on how to properly take the trash out, right? We don't drag the trash across, 5,000 square feet to take it out to the dumpster. So literally make a list of everything they do that upsets you. You know those thoughts that wake you up at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m.? I know I'm not the only entrepreneur that gets them. I started sleeping with a pen and a pad next to my bed at night because I don't want to have to reach for my phone and then you're like really awake. Those 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. thoughts, write it down. That's where to start, okay? And don't tell me your team doesn't do anything that sometimes makes your blood boil, okay? The next thing is just look at your numbers. Where do you need improvements? If you're at a 10% lead to appointment ratio, but you're at an 80% show to close, man, your enrollments, you're doing great. Not to say we never train on them again, but man, we need to focus on what does that phone script sound like? That's the role play. So that's the second place to start is look at the numbers. Third place, listen to feedback from your customers. I spent way too many years not sending customer feedback surveys. Why? I was scared of what they were going to say. I didn't want somebody calling my baby ugly. And yes, I thought my business was my baby. That first year we sent out, we started doing it at the end of the year. Learned this from Matt Arroyo, who owns Gracie Tampa South, and sent it out through Monkey Survey. So it was completely anonymous because more often than not, people are going to keep it more real when it's anonymous. And you know what was so interesting? The feedback that we got was so much more positive than it was critical. Like the thing that I was worried about the most never even happened. Was there some feedback that was just like absolutely ridiculous? Somebody complained that they didn't like the position of where our coffee maker was in the school. All right, cool. I'm not moving the coffee maker. That's where it goes. That's really the only spot we have for it, right? And then we got feedback like, we wish that you offered more no-gi training rash guards and fight shorts. Like they wanted more. They want to be able to buy more stuff from us, right? So listen to feedback from your customers. What are they saying? Okay. And then listen to feedback from your team members. Ask them, what do you guys need more help with? What do you feel strong with? I would take this slide right here and I'd say, guys, tell me where you feel the strongest and where you feel like you have the most room for improvements. And now you have your training list. Okay, so those are 4 different ways. What upsets you? Look at your numbers, the feedback from your customers, and the feedback from your team members themselves. And that is how you create your training lesson plan. It's not what Mr. Mark Moore is doing at the Growth Dojo because what his team needs help with is going to be different than, what Billy Q and Gracie Pack needs help with because they have 2 separate teams at different levels. Okay, so second step, once okay, we said earlier, some of you said upgrades or renewals or giving a tour or saving a cancellation. We then need to teach the standard. Before anybody practices, they need to know the standard. What can that include? Well, what's the goal of the conversation? Why are we having the renewal conversation? Why are we having the upgrade conversation? What are the steps? This is where you go through the process. And as you're training your team, guess what you should have in front of them? Oh, the process. Imagine that, right? The questions they should ask, the language they should use. Do you say contract or do you say agreement? I don't know. I don't know what the language you choose. It's important that they all speak the same language, though. Okay. What are the most common objections when you're having these conversations? What's the desired next step? And how are we going to measure success? I don't think it's fair for you to tell them 100% conversion on enrollments because you don't get 100% conversion on enrollments. You might get more than them. There's an authority that lies in the owner making the sale. That is true. Okay. You also have more experience, more than likely. So we teach the standard with the process in front of you. And you know what the great thing about that? If you have the process in front of you and maybe you went to an event and you changed and tweaked the process, but you never updated the document, guess what you can do right then and there? Update the document. So you're keeping your processes up to date. Okay. So we're going to teach the standard. This is the right way. Okay. Then we're going to demonstrate it. One of my biggest gripes with jujitsu instructors, I don't know if any of you ever taken a jujitsu class, but they like to go on like a 7 or 9 minute explanation of what they are going to teach you before they ever freaking show you the move. And it just like, it makes absolutely no sense to me. Could you imagine a boxing instructor doing like a 10-minute dialogue on what the jab is, but never showing what a jab is? It sounds ridiculous, right? But they do this in jujitsu. They will literally go on a 10-minute story about the omoplata and where its origin is from and what you're going to do, but they don't actually show you what the freaking omoplata looks like. Give them context, right? So that's what you're going to demonstrate. And that includes you as the owner demonstrating it. If you know you have somebody that follows the process well, it could be the manager or the top performer. Or if this is, we're doing role playing on appointment setting and you record your calls, you could play a recorded call. Like, hey, this is what the golden standard is. Okay. I also like when demonstrating to compare, showing a strong example versus a weak example. Okay. We actually have a very specific process of teaching jujitsu students that I pulled from learning Taekwondo. When you're teaching a form, typically you have everybody do the first move and you don't go on to the next move before everybody perfects the first move. And I took that concept of this kind of like step by step and do that when I teach jujitsu. Because what often happens is you have a jujitsu step that has like 12 different moves and you say, okay, guys, get a partner. They get a partner and then everybody's looking around because they don't even know and don't even remember what the first move is. So I literally walk them through, okay, first step, grab the lapel, grab the sleeve. Next step, foot down, shrimp out. Right. And then I also talk about the common errors that people make when they do the move. So, hey, common error when you grab the lapel is sometimes you'll try to grab it thumb down. It's a common error. Don't do that. Grab it thumb up. Right. So I'm giving them an example of like, what is a weak example? You want to do that when you're training your team as well. Show them strong versus show them weak. Okay. We also want to make sure we're asking them what worked well, what didn't work, where did it shift, what's the language that we are using. You need to go from this like dictator type teacher to asking questions, right? And that's what a great coach does. Once we have chosen the conversation, right, then we have taught the standard, then we demonstrate it. Hey, this is what it looks like doing well. This is not so well. Then what we're going to do is we're going to practice through role play. This may not be possible if you don't have 3 people, but if you do have 3 people, I recommend having the team member that's going to do the role play, having the other person act like the prospect, the parent, or the student, and then having a third person be the coach or the observer. Okay. Now you do need a group of 3 for this. So if there's only 2 of you, well, then you're just going to be the team member and then the prospect, parent, or student. Okay. I do like having that coach and observer because you get a third party perspective. And I think we all know that a lot of us just have different perspectives. We can watch the same scenario and think different things just because of the way that we were raised. Okay. So we're going to practice what the standard was. Okay. After we demonstrated it with role play. Okay. I would also recommend starting easy and then making it more difficult, right? So like a family experiencing financial concerns, that's probably a lot harder conversation to have than a cooperative prospect on the phone that like really wants to book. Okay. So you want to kind of drip release it, right? I'm going to start them with kind of the white belt level and then we can work our way up. Okay. Step number 5. I do think having some form of a scoring system is important. I was on a coaching call yesterday with an agency owner, and they had hired a new operations manager, and the operations manager didn't want to have KPIs for their team members. And he was like, I don't know how to explain to this guy why KPIs and hitting numbers is so important. And I asked him, I said, well, what's the guy's favorite sport? And he said, oh, he's a huge soccer fan. And I said, perfect. I want you to ask him if he watched the World Cup. And the answer is going to be yes. Of course I did. And then I want you to ask him, would he have watched it if they didn't keep score? It's like, look, watching a game where you're not keeping score, not as fun and exciting. This also adds a competitive aspect to it, right? Where, okay, right now you're at a 3. This is what I need to get you to be at a 5. All right. I love using AI for this because this can be a little tedious. And I think it's one of the absolute best use cases for AI that isn't just cool and useful, but can also make you profitable, where the AI actually scores whatever is happening in that interaction based off of your SOP. At the end of the day, what gets measured gets improved. Okay. The other thing with role playing, and one of the things I think people like, if I'm on stage and I say, okay, guys, we're going to do a role playing activity, half of the people in the audience go to the bathroom. It happens all the time. And I see it to other speakers as well. And I think it's just like the concept or culture around role play just hasn't been explained properly. Like, hey, this is just role play is the same thing as you go into the bag and doing, 20 kicks to get your round kick stronger or your side kick stronger. It's just practice. But I think another reason is because with role play, we often just jump to what they did not do well. You need to ask them to give themselves feedback as opposed to you just pointing the finger and saying, oh, you missed this, you missed this, you missed this, you missed this. So you literally ask them, what do you think you just did well when we went through the prospecting call? What are the areas that you want to improve on? What's maybe one adjustment we can make? And then based off of that one adjustment, we're going to run it again. Okay. One of the big mistakes that I see is, let's say we're doing an appointment setting call, and the first aspect is them answering the phone, and they answer the phone and they say, it's a great day at Gracie Pack. This is Coach Chris. May I ask who I'm speaking with? Let me know right there. Maybe give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. How was my energy when I answered that call? What we would typically do is let them continue the role play. And what I'm telling you that you should do is stop the role play right there. The first sentence is not where I need it to be. Hey, pause. Great job adhering to the script. Okay. What do you think maybe there could have been an area of improvement on that first sentence when answering the call? And then if they don't come to the fact that the energy was dull, then I'm going to tell them, well, what I want you to do is I want you to smile. And I know it's ridiculous, but I want you to smile before you answer the call. Let's run it again. It's a great day at Gracie Pack. This is Coach Chris. May I ask who I'm speaking with? Cool. And if they don't do it, we're going to run it again. That's how you practice, right? If you're teaching somebody a 12-step combination, but they can't get the first move, you don't just jump to the next steps in the combination. This is something that has really helped us with training our appointment setters, which we have 22 appointment setters at GrowPro. Okay. So it's something that we have a lot of experience in. And I think it's just kind of a small little tweak that you can make when you are role playing to help you out. Okay. Last up, and I know we're at 1:00. If you got to bounce, I completely understand. But then we want to review real conversations. And that means that you should record them. I do believe every single lead phone call that you make should be recorded. We all make phone calls and you hear like, hey, I'm calling, on a recorded line for quality assurance purposes. Depending on the state you're in, you do need to tell them that you're doing it, but you can also just record the role play and then watch it back as well. Okay. Then math is the path. We're going to track the results. If you're focusing on booking, if you chose, hey, this was the one that we're struggling with the most. Okay. Well, then this is how we're going to see if we're improving with that role play. Okay. Or what's the appointment ratio? What's the confirmation? What's the show rate? All of those are going to go in. So what are the KPIs with each one of these conversations? Okay. And that's how you're going to determine whether or not the training is paying off or you need to make some tweaks. All right. It can't be something you do once per quarter or only after the problem occurs. Please, at a minimum, once a week. For those of you that are doing it daily, absolutely love to hear that. I think that's so awesome. Here is kind of a breakdown. If you're just doing a 30-minute training once a week, we're going to review like what's the one thing, what's the one conversation we're going over. Okay. Always like to kick off trainings and meetings with wins, guys. It's important. It can shift people's attitudes, focusing on what are the good things that are happening. So just first 5 minutes, like what's a win? What's the KPI we're going to focus on, right? Is it going to be the renewal or the upgrade? And then we're going to teach, right? So we're going to give them the standard. We're going to walk through that. And then we do the practice, right? And that's the role playing. That's the scoring. That's the coaching. And then just get a commitment at the end, right? What's their biggest takeaway and what do they want to use and take into, the next week? And, depending on your teaching style and how much time you have with this, you can shorten it, you can elongate it. But I think this is just like a good standard place to start. Okay. So if you want help with the aspect of role play, we do have this AI role play app that we built out. And, with role play, there's typically requires multiple people and we don't always have enough time. And what's really cool is we've gotten some really amazing feedback from our clients that are using this. We had one client that increased to a 96% booking ratio. And she said it was because all she did was make her team call into the AI Dojo roleplay. And what we've done is we've built gamification. Remember earlier I told you having AI score it is like a really great place to really great AI use case that isn't just cool. It's also useful and can make you more profitable. So if you guys are interested in this, it's only $99 a month. You can cancel at any time. You can practice on the mobile device, so you can call in or you can do it on a desktop. And what's really cool is we trained it with Maya systems. But if you have your own system, so if you have an SOP of your appointment setting or your enrollment or your upgrade or your renewal or cancellation conversations, then it's completely custom. And all you have to do is upload the PDF. It takes like less than 2 minutes. So it's trained on Maya systems, but if you're not a part of Maya or you're not sure what they are, or you just want to train them on your systems, all you got to do is upload the PDF. And now when it scores your team after the conversation, it's going to score it against whether or not they were compliant with your custom scenarios. Okay. So it's really cool. It's $99. And what I'm also offering is if you sign up today, then you get a free 30-minute coaching session with me. All right. I'm really trying to push this out to get more people to use this. I do not believe this just takes away your role play. But for those of you that are doing daily training or you're doing multiple times a week, this could help them get more reps. And it's something they could also do without you, right? It doesn't require you or somebody else to be a part of that conversation. So just remember, your team's confidence isn't built through motivation. It's built through preparation, right? The most prepared are the most dedicated. So you've got some action steps here, and it really just depends on where you're at, but just choose that one conversation that you want to have. Document the standard, demonstrate it, practice it, score it, coach it, and repeat. And then you're going to look at your numbers and see like, okay, where is, the needle moving? All right. So again, if you're interested in the role play bot, drop the link in there. And if you purchase today, you'll get a free 30-minute consulting call. Okay. Any questions on what we just went over? And if you don't have questions, I want to know what was your number one takeaway in the chat, and then we will wrap up here. These takeaways are helpful for me because it lets me know like, oh, sometimes it's something that I wouldn't have even expected, right? So what was number one takeaway, or it could be your next action step. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute. Mr. Moore, you are welcome. Guys, like I said in the beginning, I think the number one skill that you need to have as the owner is the ability to attract and identify and train top tier talent. And unfortunately, we just don't spend enough time on it. More teams role playing, put on the calendar, making a list of the things that annoy me. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Elliot. Keep the meeting short, 10 minutes. Yeah, we just need 10 minutes, right? Increase staff training, excellent information, better onboarding. Awesome. Okay, just signed up for the role play. Cool. Mr. Sweeney, I'll send you an email to get on my calendar. Always appreciate you guys showing up. Make your hair look good so I get a nice, pretty picture here. Everybody smile. Boom. Get that content out. Make it a great day. Holler if you need me. Peace.